Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Sam Kwak, one of the Kwak Brothers, real estate investor. And today, guys, we're going to talk about how do we determine cash flow on a rental property. Now, you might notice that I'm wearing a shirt and shorts. Obviously, the camera isn't capturing it. I just got back from vacation, so this will probably be the only time that you'll see me with just shirt and then shorts. Usually, I got a full-blown suit. Obviously, if you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, you'll notice that I'm always wearing a suit. But it is casual vacation time, so I'm going to go ahead and stick with shirt and shorts. So today's video topic, how do we calculate cash flow on a rental property? How do we correctly make sure that we have the right cash flow? How do we determine our net operating income on a rental property? So this could be for apart buildings. This could be for single family residential. So let's go and get started here. And I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a little disclaimer by letting you guys know that every market's different. Different situations may change the obviously the situation in net operating income. And also, I am not an attorney, so guys, make sure that you don't misconstrue this video as a legal advice or any sort of legal tip for you guys. Cool. So we always start, and when I say always, it's almost always start off with the gross rent, right? So gross. Right. Now, this is determined by the market, right? You don't just, say, hey, the rent's gonna be $1,200, right? You have to know what the gross rent is, and oftentimes that is determined by the market, what the comparable rent is in your market. So you have to quickly find out if you're dealing with, let's say, a two-bedroom apartment for one of your apartment buildings. You have to determine what is the typical rent for your area on a two-bedroom, one-bath scenario. So one of the best ways to figure that out, obviously, is through a real estate agent. Another best way I typically like to use is a website called rentometer.com, right? I'll probably write it down on the link description below, or I'll put it on the video right here. Okay, you'll see it. So Rentometer is another a good place, not the best, but I think it does the job. And also, Tom, another way you can do it is just fish around the neighborhood to look for what's been rented and what's not being rented. So you want to determine what is your average market rent. And you'll always want to stick with your average market rent. And another thing to note with the average market rent is figure out what quality and standard is that market going for. So if your property is repaired and it's looking great, to rehab to the best possible condition within the market area, well then chances are you can justify the highest market rent. Now, if your property, if your unit isn't that up to standard, right, it's okay, right, then chances are you might want to be lower just a tad bit on the market rent. So that is super huge. That I mean, this will be covered in another video, but knowing your market rent, your gross rent, will also determine the value of your multifamily property. Not so much with the single family, but this is huge when it comes to figuring out your cap rate on an apartment, your multifamily residential properties. So with the gross rent, one of the first things that I subtract out of the gross rent as my initial expense is I typically subtract 10%. Okay, 10%. I usually determine that as maintenance. Okay, now sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but I always like to keep it at the 10% average, just knowing that in the future you might run into expenses where you have to fix the furnace, fix the roof, fix the windows. You may have ongoing maintenance, right? Just patch up job on your wall. You may have an outlet that's not working. Those typical things will be part of that 10% maintenance. Even if you get lucky, let's say in a given month, and that you don't have a maintenance for that month, I would still stuff that 10% away as a reserve in case you do run into a major maintenance item. The next thing that I would put, I'm changing position here, is 10% for management. Now, this is something that I debate a lot with other investors and people who've been investing a very long time, who often likes to say, Sam, I like to manage my own property, so therefore that's not applicable to me. Well, I would argue that no matter whether you're managing your own properties or you got a property manager working alongside you, I always typically put 10% for management, just because even if you do manage your own property, you're having to still put in your own time, right? you and I both know your time is money. So obviously you want to factor that in because you're paying yourself to manage the property. Versus if you're obviously hiring somebody to manage your property, then you may pay up to 10% in property management fee, and that fee is on the monthly gross rent. Okay, so the next thing that I like to factor is 8% for vacancies. Now, you're going to run into a situation down the line where your property is going to have a vacancy, right? Whether you own a multifamily or a single-family residential, you're going to have a typical 1 month average of vacant unit. So you want to make sure that you can cover those expenses in that given month while the property is vacant. I mean, you still have to pay for the mortgage, you still have to pay for the maintenance, you still have to pay for the utilities, right? So you want to factor that 8% vacancy expense in there in case, and when I say in case, you will have a vacancy in your rental property. The next thing that you would want to subtract, obviously, is going to be your property taxes. Okay? Now, this is one thing that changes state by state. Where I am in the state of Illinois, this is up the wazoo, right? I mean, the property taxes are crazy big amounts. So obviously, if you're in states like Alabama, Indiana, Tennessee, some of these Midwestern, southern states typically have lower property taxes. So you have an advantage there, but typically with those property taxes being lower, you will also see a lower gross rent amount as well. So you want to subtract that as well. You want to also subtract your insurance cost. And what's really tough about insurance and factoring the cost is you really won't know until you have an insurance agent kind of underwriting the property for you and saying, hey, this is your insurance premium. But the insurance depends heavily on the condition of the property, the age, what sort of accommodation, do you have a pool, right? All those different factors are going to determine the cost of the insurance. So it's really hard to tell you, hey, insurance is 8% of the gross rent. It's always not the case. That's something that even for me, it's difficult to determine. So what the best situation there is either A, get a insurance agent to underwrite the property for you and to tell you what the premium might be. Next thing is, if you're buying a property, then get an idea of what the insurance cost is from the seller, right? If the seller is paying, let's say, $100 a month, then chances are you're going to be swinging anywhere between $80 to $120 a month on the insurance. So in a single-family residential, this will be it. Now, if you have multifamily, then you're going to have to add in your utilities costs, right? If you're paying gas, water, garbage, sewer, etc., then you're going to have to also subtract that. So the bottom line, okay, what you are going to get is the NOI, the net operating income. Now, the net operating income is not the same thing as the cash flow. Just make sure you're aware. Now, if you own this free and clear, then yes, your net operating income is your cash flow. However, if you have a mortgage or you borrow the money or you have owner financing going on this property, then you have what's called debt service. So your debt service is your principal and interest, right? Your mortgage payment. So you want to subtract the NOI, subtract it to your principal and interest payment on your financing, and that's how you get the cash flow. So if at any point someone tells you that the cash flow or the net operating income is larger than what this figure tells you, then they're kind of misconstruing the figures to make it look like there's a lot more not net operating income coming in from the property. I see this a lot typically when I deal with sellers that hand me their figures, what the property is generating in terms of income, and I can see that they're doing their figures wrong or they're presenting their figures incorrectly to accelerate or to motivate me to buy. Now, of course, me being an educated investor, I understand that there's going to be a certain amount of expenses. Typically, with all the expenses adding up, you're going to see anywhere between 45 to 55% expenses to income ratio. So what that means, typically, half of your gross rent may just end up becoming your expenses. Now, again, it depends on your market. It depends on your situation. It depends on different underlying factors. But what I notice on consistent rate, I notice that anywhere between 45 to 55% is expensive. If you see anything higher than the 55% expenses, I typically see that as a red flag, or I may see that the gross rent might be really low compared to what the market is asking for. So guys, that's pretty much an idea. If you guys have any questions, for those who are watching this live on Facebook, leave the questions below. I'll go ahead and address them as soon as I'm done with this video. I just want to make sure I get to the content. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and comment away if you guys have any questions in regards to how do you calculate cash flow, at least the way that I've learned and what works for me. So far, it's been working great with the 75 units that my brother and I have, soon to purchase more. So with this model, it works pretty well. Now, again, it all depends on the market, it depends on the situation, it depends on other underlying factors that I may have not mentioned. So make sure you check with that. But in a general sense, this is normally how I would like to cash flow and determine the cash flow of a given rental property. So guys, that's pretty much it on this video. If you guys have any questions, be sure you go ahead and ask away. If you're watching this on YouTube or even on Facebook, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the like on this video so that we can get you guys more videos and helpful tips in real estate investing. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys next time.